My name is Eileen Rich, and I will be talking about the Keystone XL Pipeline Approval Act. In 2008, oil company TransCanada first announced plans to build Keystone Pipeline XL, an oil pipeline through the United States. The path of the pipeline was set to run from Alberta, Canada, to Port Arthur, just along the Gulf of Mexico in Texas. The pipeline would span 1,700 miles, running through Montana, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Much of the push and support for the pipeline came from its promise to create jobs, the number disputed anywhere between 3,000 to 20,000. This ties into the core American value of a Protestant work ethic and the idea that creating jobs will better communities, the economy, and life satisfaction. In November of 2014, the Keystone Pipeline Act failed to pass through Congress, needing 60 votes to pass, but only receiving 59. Every Republican voted in favor of its construction. After the new Senate in 2015, the act passed with 62 votes. President Obama then vetoed it in February of 2015 as expected. The Senate failed to pass it with a necessary 2/3 majority in March of 2015 with only 62 votes. In January of 2017, President Trump signed an executive action to expedite the necessary approval of the pipeline. Then Secretary of State Rex Tillerson recused himself from issues relating to Keystone, as he was formerly the chief executive officer of ExxonMobil Corp., a company that would benefit from the pipeline's construction. In March of 2017, the State Department approved the pipeline's construction. Construction was then blocked in November of 2018, but in August of 2019, an alternate route of the pipeline's construction was approved by the Supreme Court of Nebraska. Just this month, April of 2020, federal judges in Montana have stopped construction, citing further investigation is necessary in the protection of endangered species. The overt objectives of this pipeline are to build a pipeline to transfer oil from Canada to Port Arthur. Along the way, a main objective is to create jobs in planning and construction. Covert objectives include furthering our reliance on oil and the fossil fuel industry and putting billions of dollars in the hands of oil companies in the United States and in Canada. The original route that the pipeline was set to pass through would go through indigenous lands and sensitive environments, including the Yellowstone River, the Sandhills region in Nebraska, and the Ogallala Aquifer, which serves as the nation's biggest freshwater aquifer, used for both drinking water and agriculture. TransCanada overlooked these concerns because of the profit they will gain from it. The crude oil is extremely hard to extract from the ground, as it takes deep digging in the earth and steam to retrieve. The process pours a great deal of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. This poses a short-term concern for the people that live on or near the construction of the pipeline, as well as the plants, animals, and ecosystems that it reaches. Additionally, the secretion of greenhouse gases poses a great long-term effects on the earth, furthering the climate crisis. Leaks and oil spills are another unintended consequence. The first pipeline TransCanada built in Nebraska had 12 leaks in just 12 months. Sure enough, after its construction, Keystone Pipeline XL leaked in South Dakota, spilling over 200,000 gallons of crude oil into the land. On one hand, families could benefit from Keystone Pipeline XL, as it would create jobs and employ some thousands of people, many of which are blue-collar workers in construction who were hit hard by the economic crash of 2008. However, environmentalists speak to the harm it would cause to sensitive ecosystems across the Midwest. Indigenous populations along the construction zones of the pipeline are another target. This ties into a long, complicated, and tragic history of the United States' treatment towards Native Americans. Many activists point to the Keystone Pipeline as yet another failure of the United States government to protect indigenous people's rights. Many farming and ranching families along the pipeline's route oppose its construction, as it would destroy, disrupt, or take away their land and livelihood completely. Many conservatives and even Tea Party groups speak out against the pipeline's construction, claiming it is an overreach of federal power to take away American-owned land for Canadian profit. Generally, congressional Republicans support the construction of Keystone XL, citing oil industry profit and job creation. Most congressional Democrats are against it, except Democrats mainly in states where construction of the pipeline creates jobs. The Keystone XL pipeline posed an interesting issue for Barack Obama when it surfaced just before his re-election. On one hand, labor unions were very much in support of the pipeline and the employment that would follow. On the other hand, environmentalists were against the construction. Both groups were key to Obama's base of support, and he strategically delayed any decision on the pipeline until after his re-election in 2012. Some speculators claim that without the Keystone XL pipeline, environmental alternatives would be worse. One CNN analyst offered that using tanker trucks to transport the oil would pump carbon emissions 28% higher than the pipeline would, and using rail to transport the oil would push emissions up to 40 to 42% higher than the pipeline would. It's clear that while the U.S. is reliant and invested in the crude oil and the fossil fuel industry as a whole, there will be no perfect solution. Although the construction of Keystone XL pipeline would be detrimental to families and the environment, it is not as simple it is not a simple victory in the halt of its construction. To mitigate the issue, the United States must move away from its reliance on fossil fuels. Investing in clean sources of energy will not only benefit individuals and the environment, but employ thousands of workers. The construction, supervision, and running of solar plants, windmills, geothermal heating, hydropower plants, and more will offer new jobs to employ Americans without the expense of harming families and lands across the nation.